Did you delete my wife's name? With a single glance, Malik Idris silenced the crowd, his voice a knife straight at the manager. Malik Idris, a tech mogul shrouded in quiet power, stepped out, his eyes locked on Zara, his wife, the keynote speaker of the Apex Forum, denied her rightful VIP room in the tense atmosphere of the Luminary Tower's lobby. Welcome, story lovers. Where are you watching this story from? Drop your city below and let us know. Does this feel like a mistake or something deeper? Does Zara get her space back? What secrets lie behind the override that erased her? Stay tuned. This tale of dignity and reckoning will leave you stunned. Don't miss our latest stories. Hit the subscribe button and ring the bell to see new videos. Share your thoughts and let's discover the truth together. The Luminary Towers stood like a monolith of glass and ambition. Its conference wing a cathedral where the Apex Forum unfolded, a global stage for visionaries, tech titans, and policymakers. At 9:45 a.m., the atrium pulsed with anticipation, a symphony of murmured deals and clinking coffee cups. Polished granite floors reflected quartz chandeliers, their light casting a flattering glow on a curated crowd of bespoke suits and designer dresses. Yet for Zara, the keynote speaker and guest of honor, the morning carried a different weight. She stood at the threshold of room 5B, the VIP space reserved for her. Her name inexplicably erased from the access list, her presence questioned by a system that should have celebrated her. Zara's heels clicked softly against the granite as she approached the check-in podium, her posture a study in controlled grace. At 34, she was a force, data scientist, best-selling author of Code for Justice, and a TED Talk phenomenon whose words on AI fairness had rippled across continents. Her navy blazer hugged her frame with tailored precision, a white silk blouse, catching the light like a quiet declaration. Her natural curls, swept into a low bun, framed a face that needed no adornment beyond a simple silver cuff on her wrist, a gift from her husband, Malik Idris. She wore no logos, no flash. Zara didn't need to perform power. She embodied it. The invitation lay folded in her pocket, its gold-embossed edges a tactile reminder of her place here. It wasn't just a summons. It was a mandate. The Apex Forum had courted her voice, her vision, to set the tone for a future shaped by innovation. Malik had confirmed Room 5B weeks ago, a private sanctuary for her keynote prep, secured through his direct line to the event director. "You're the star," he'd said over coffee, his voice warm but unyielding, like a man who knew the world bent to those who refused to yield. Zara had smiled then, but now, as she stood in the atrium, a flicker of instinct told her this moment would test more than her eloquence. At the podium, a young staff member, Elise Moreau, greeted her with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her name tag gleamed, her blonde hair pulled into a severe bun, her demeanor polished but guarded. Zara offered her badge, the word keynote embossed in bold. "Good morning," Zara said, her voice smooth, measured. "I'm Zara, room 5B reserved for keynote preparation." Elise's fingers danced across a tablet, her brow furrowing slightly. She scrolled, paused, then scrolled again. The seconds stretched, a quiet hum of tension building. "I'm sorry, Ms. Nia," Elise said. Her tone clipped, professional but with an edge of finality. "Your name isn't on the access list for the VIP room." Zara's brow lifted, a subtle arc that carried more weight than words. "There must be a mistake," she said, her voice steady, though her pulse quickened. "My team reserved room 5B last week. It was confirmed." Elise's smile tightened, a practiced reflex. "I don't see it here," she said, her eyes flicking to the tablet as if it held the final word. "Perhaps you meant the general lounge? It's quieter there. Just down the hall to the east." The words landed like a velvet slap, polite but pointed, a dismissal wrapped in courtesy. Zara's jaw tightened, but her composure held. A fortress built from years of navigating rooms that weighed her skin before her credentials. She knew this script, her presence measured against an unspoken hierarchy, her right to occupy space, questioned by those who assumed she didn't belong. Around her, other attendees glided past, their badges granting seamless entry to VIP rooms. A man in a linen suit flashed his pass and was waved through. A woman in a crimson dress laughed as a staff member ushered her inside, all white, all effortless, their privilege a key that unlocked doors Zara had to pry open. "No," Zara said, her voice low but firm, each syllable a deliberate stake in the ground. "I meant room 5B. My husband, Malik Idris, finalized it, directly with the event director." Elise's smile flickered, a crack in her polished facade. The name Malik Idris carried weight, a whisper of power that rippled through the tech world like a seismic wave. But Elise didn't falter. She tilted her head, her headset crackling softly as she murmured something inaudible. "Let me check. With my manager," she said, stepping aside, her fingers brushing the tablet as if it could absolve her of the moment. Zara stood, her arms relaxed but her eyes sharp, scanning the atrium. The air smelled of espresso and ambition, the hum of conversation a backdrop to the silent inventory being taken of her. She wasn't invisible, not yet, but she felt the weight of being overlooked, her badge a mere trinket against the machinery of exclusion. She glanced at room 5B's glass door, its sleek interior a promise of solitude and focus. That space was hers, claimed by right, by contract, by the sheer force of her presence. Yet here she was, reduced to a clerical error, her name erased by a system that didn't hesitate to rewrite her story. Minutes ticked by, each one a quiet insult. 5, then 10. The crowd thickened, their glances grazing her, some curious, others indifferent. Zara didn't shift her weight or check her phone. She stood, a pillar of quiet defiance, her silence louder than any protest. She thought of Malik, his voice echoing in her mind. "They need you there." She thought of her book, its pages a battle cry against systems that marginalized the unseen. This wasn't just a room. It was a line in the sand, a test of whether her name carried the weight it deserved. Elise returned, her expression unchanged, but her posture betrayed a hint of unease. "Ms. Nia," she said, her voice softer now, as if coaxing compliance. "I've spoken with the manager. There's been a mix-up. Room 5B is currently assigned to another guest. The East Lounge is available and it's quite comfortable." Zara's eyes locked onto Elise's, a gaze that didn't waver, didn't flinch. "A mix-up," she repeated, the words slow, deliberate, like a blade testing its edge. "You're telling me my confirmed reservation made by Malik Idris was given to someone else without notice?" Elise hesitated, her fingers twitching against the tablet. "It's a logistical issue," she said, the words hollow, a script she didn't fully believe. "We can resolve this if you'll step to the lounge." Zara didn't move. Her voice when it came was a quiet storm, each word a spark in the dry tinder of the moment. "I'm not going anywhere," she said. "This is my room, my reservation, and my moment. I suggest you find your manager. Now." The atrium seemed to pause, the hum of conversation dimming as heads turned, sensing the shift in the air. Elise's smile vanished, her headset crackling as she murmured something urgent. Zara stood, her badge gleaming, her presence a challenge to the system that dared to erase her. Room 5B waited beyond the glass, a symbol of what was hers by right. And in that moment, Zara Nia was not just a speaker, not just a name. She was a reckoning, poised to rewrite the rules of a world that thought it could deny her. The atrium of Luminary Towers held its breath, the hum of the Apex Forum's crowd fading into a brittle hush. Zara Nia stood rooted before the podium, her badge gleaming with the word keynote. Her presence a quiet storm defying the dismissal she'd just endured. Elise Moreau, the receptionist, had retreated behind her tablet, her murmured call for the manager a lifeline in a moment that felt like a verdict. Zara's words, "I'm not going anywhere," hung in the air, a gauntlet thrown at a system that had dared to erase her. Room 5B, her reserved sanctuary, remained just beyond the glass door, its promise of dignity mocked by a single word: override. Footsteps echoed across the granite floor, sharp and deliberate, slicing through the atrium's tension. Victor Langston, the hotel manager, emerged from a side corridor, his navy suit pristine, his silver cufflinks catching the chandelier's glow. His face wore the practiced calm of a man accustomed to smoothing over inconveniences. But his eyes, assessing, calculating, betrayed a flicker of unease as they settled on Zara. At 40, Victor was a fixture at Luminary Towers, a gatekeeper of its exclusivity, his authority woven into the hotel's polished seams. Yet, in this moment, he faced a woman whose resolve was a mirror, reflecting his system's flaws. "Ms. Nia," Victor began, his voice smooth, almost conciliatory, "I understand there's been a mix-up. Let's see how we can resolve this." His smile was thin, a veneer of courtesy that didn't reach his eyes. Zara's gaze didn't waver, her voice steady as a blade. "It's not a mix-up," she said. "My reservation for room 5B was confirmed last week. I'd like to know why it's no longer mine." Victor's smile tightened, a muscle twitching in his jaw. He glanced at Elise, who stood frozen, her tablet a shield against the mounting pressure. "The room has been reassigned," he said, his tone clipped now, as if stating an unassailable fact. "It's been allocated to Mr. Grayson Holt, a long-standing partner of the Apex Forum." The name landed like a stone in still water, rippling through Zara's composure. Grayson Holt, a white tech CEO, a platinum sponsor whose name adorned conference banners, was lounging inside room 5B, his laughter seeping through the glass like a taunt. Zara's fingers tightened around her badge, the plastic edges biting into her palm. She knew Holt's type, men who navigated the world with the ease of unearned privilege, their presence a currency that opened doors others had to break down. "Reassigned," Zara repeated, her voice low, each syllable a spark. "You mean overridden? You canceled my reservation without contacting me or my team. Why?" Victor's posture stiffened, his hands clasping behind his back as if to anchor himself. "It was a last-minute request from Mr. Holt's team," he said, his words measured, rehearsed. "He's a key stakeholder. These decisions are part of operational flexibility." Zara's eyes narrowed, her mind racing through the implications. Operational flexibility, a phrase as sterile as it was sinister, a cloak for choices that prioritized one person's comfort over another's right. She stepped closer, her voice cutting through the atrium's hush. "So your system allows you to erase my name, my reservation, with a single button press, and you don't need my permission?" The question hung like a blade, its edge sharpened by the truth it exposed. Victor's smile faltered, a crack in his polished facade. Around them, the crowd's murmurs stilled, attendees stealing glances, their phones discreetly raised to capture the unfolding drama. Elise shifted, her headset crackling, but she didn't speak. The atrium felt smaller, the air charged with the weight of Zara's challenge. Victor cleared his throat, his voice regaining its sheen. "Mr. Holt is a platinum sponsor," he said, as if the title justified everything. "We accommodate our partners to ensure the forum's success. The East Lounge is available, Ms. Nia. It's comfortable, private." "Comfortable," Zara interrupted, her voice a quiet thunder. "You're offering me a consolation while someone else occupies the space I reserved, a space I earned as the keynote speaker." Victor's eyes flickered, caught between protocol and the realization that Zara wasn't backing down. He gestured subtly to a security guard stationed near the escalators, a move so casual it might have gone unnoticed. But Zara saw it, her pulse quickening. Not with fear, but with clarity. This wasn't just about a room. It was about a system designed to make her invisible, to reduce her to a footnote in someone else's story. "I'm not moving," she said. Her words a declaration, each one a brick in the wall of her resolve. "You made a choice to override my reservation. Now explain why my name was less valuable than his." The atrium seemed to contract, the crowd's silence a tangible force. Victor's face hardened, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Ms. Yeah, let's not escalate this. We can resolve it quietly. Zara's lips curved. Not a smile, but a challenge. Quietly, she said, is how systems like yours thrive. I'm not here to make this easy for you. Through the glass door, Grayson Holt's silhouette moved, oblivious to the storm brewing outside. His coffee cup clinked against a saucer, a mundane sound that felt like mockery. Zara's gaze lingered there, her mind a steel trap, cataloging every detail, the tablet, the override, the casual arrogance of a system that deemed her expendable. She wasn't just fighting for room 5B, she was fighting for every name erased by a button, every voice silenced by flexibility. Victor took a step back, his cufflinks glinting as he adjusted his jacket. I'll review the logs, he said, his tone a concession laced with reluctance. But I suggest you wait in the lounge while we sort this out. Zara didn't blink. I suggest you find my reservation, she said, her voice a final spark in the dry tinder of the moment, because I'm not going anywhere. The guard shifted, his hand resting on his radio, but he didn't move. The crowd watched, breathless, as Zara stood, a pillar of defiance in a sea of privilege. Room 5B waited, its glass walls a silent witness to a battle that had only just begun. The atrium of Luminary towers froze, its polished granite floors reflecting the weight of a moment teetering on the edge of reckoning. Zara Nia stood unyielding, her badge emblazoned with keynote, her defiance a beacon in the face of Victor Langston's calculated dismissal. The manager's words, operational flexibility, still lingered, a sterile excuse for erasing her reservation for room 5B, now occupied by Grayson Holt, a platinum sponsor whose laughter mocked her from beyond the glass door. The crowd, a mix of tech elites and influencers, watched in hushed fascination, their phones poised to capture the unraveling drama. Then, a low hum sliced through the tension, a sound as sleek and commanding as a gathering storm. Heads turned, and the air shifted as a Rolls-Royce boat tail glided to a stop at the hotel's private entrance. Malik Idris stepped out, a figure carved from quiet power, his presence reshaping the atrium like a tidal wave held in check. At 6'2", his charcoal suit was a study in understated wealth, its tailored lines whispering authority without a single ostentatious thread. His bronze skin caught the chandelier's glow, and his eyes, sharp, unyielding, locked onto Zara with a force that silenced whispers. Malik was no stranger to rooms like this, a venture capitalist whose name reverberated through tech corridors, a man who moved markets with a nod. But today he was something more, a husband, a protector, a reckoning clothed in calm. He crossed the atrium in long, deliberate strides, the crowd parting like water before a blade. Zara stood by the podium, her arms crossed, her dignity a fortress, against Victor's attempts to diminish her. Malik's gaze flicked to her, a silent question answered by the steel in her eyes. "They made you wait?" he asked, his voice low, a rumble that carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken promises. Zara tilted her head toward Victor, her voice steady, but laced with fire. "They gave my room to someone else. Apparently I don't fit the VIP profile." Malik's jaw flexed, a subtle shift that spoke of controlled fury. He turned to Victor, who stood rigid, his cufflinks glinting as he clasped his hands, a futile attempt to anchor his authority. Elise Moreau, the receptionist, shrank behind her tablet, her headset silent, her role in the exchange reduced to a bystander in a storm. The security guard, poised near the escalators, hesitated, his hand hovering over his radio, sensing the shift in power. "You gave away my wife's reservation," Malik said. Not a question, but a blade, each word honed to cut through excuses. "The room she booked as the keynote speaker. Explain." Victor's throat bobbed, his polished demeanor cracking under Malik's gaze. "Mr. Idris," he stammered, his voice a thin thread of composure. "We didn't realize she was your wife. It was a simple oversight." "You didn't need to know she was my wife," Malik interrupted, his voice steady but searing, a fire that burned without raising its volume. You needed to respect her name, her reservation, her place. Her name is enough. The words landed like a gavel, reverberating through the atrium, silencing the crowd's murmurs. Zara's lips curved, not a smile, but a spark of solidarity. Her eyes meeting Malik's in a moment of unspoken alliance. He reached into his jacket, pulling out his phone with a precision that felt almost ceremonial. With a single tap, he held up a screenshot. A confirmation email for Room 5B, time-stamped, verified, with Zara's name in bold. Below it, a transaction code and a snapshot of the hotel's booking system, irrefutable proof of her claim. This was sent to your system, Malik said, his voice a quiet thunder. So tell me, Victor, who authorized the override? Victor paled, his knuckles whitening around his clasped hands. The crowd leaned in, their phones capturing every word, every flinch. Through the glass door, Grayson Holt's silhouette remained oblivious, his coffee cup clinking against a saucer, a mundane act that felt like defiance. Victor's eyes darted to Elise, then back to Malik, searching for an escape. It was a last-minute request from Mr. Holt's team, he said, his voice faltering. He's a platinum sponsor. Zara stepped forward, her voice slicing through the air. And I'm the guest of honor, invited to set the tone for this forum. Yet you chose his comfort over my contract. The atrium seemed to contract, the crowd's silence a tangible force. Malik's gaze bore into Victor, unyielding, a predator sizing up prey. You thought her name didn't matter, he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper, each word spark in the dry tinder of the moment. That's your mistake, and you'll pay for it. Victor's face twitched, his authority unraveling like a threadbare suit. He opened his mouth, but no words came, his excuses swallowed by the weight of Malik's presence. The security guard stood frozen, his radio silent, his role irrelevant in a battle fought with truth and resolve. Zara stood beside Malik, her badge a beacon, her silence a weapon. The glass door to room 5B loomed behind them, a symbol of what was hers by right, now a battlefield where names were reclaimed and systems were challenged. The atrium of Luminary towers exhaled, a fragile pause after the storm of Malik Idris's arrival. His words, "Her name is enough," still echoed, a verdict that left Victor Langston's authority in tatters. Zarania stood by the podium, her badge gleaming with keynote, her presence a quiet fire that refused to be doused. Room 5B, her rightful sanctuary, remained occupied by Grayson Holt, his silhouette a smug shadow behind the glass door. The crowd, a mosaic of tech elites and influencers, lingered, their whispers a low hum, their phones poised to immortalize the drama. Malik's gaze held Victor captive, the manager's cufflinks glinting as he stammered half-formed excuses. Yet, as the tension simmered, a new figure emerged from the throng, her approach as deliberate as a chess move, her smile a mask of calculated warmth. Dr. Elaine Prescott glided forward, a white woman in her 50s, her cream silk dress flowing like a diplomat's truce flag. A renowned sociologist and Apex Forum regular, Elaine was a fixture in academic circles, her books on social dynamics gracing bestseller lists, her TED Talks polished to a sheen. Her silver hair was swept into an elegant chignon, her pearl earrings catching the chandelier's glow. To the crowd, she was a beacon of progressive wisdom, a voice of reason in a world of conflict. But to Zara, standing resolute, Elaine's approach carried a different weight, a patronizing sympathy that felt more like a leash than a lifeline. Zara, Elaine began, her voice soft, honeyed, the kind that filled lecture halls and soothed boardrooms. I couldn't help but overhear. I understand how you must feel. She paused, her hand resting lightly on Zara's arm, a gesture meant to convey solidarity but landing like an intrusion. This must be so upsetting. Zara's eyes met Elaine's, her gaze a steel trap, unyielding yet composed. She didn't pull away, but her posture stiffened, a silent signal that she was not a canvas for someone else's narrative. The crowd watched, their murmurs fading, sensing a new layer to the unfolding drama. Victor, still reeling from Malik's confrontation, seized the moment to retreat, his steps hasty as he murmured something to Elise Moreau, the receptionist, who stood frozen behind her tablet. "Upsetting," Zara repeated, her voice low, each syllable a spark in the dry tinder of the moment. "Is that what you think this is? A misunderstanding that stings?" Elaine's smile faltered, but she recovered quickly, her hand withdrawing as she clasped it with the other, a gesture of practiced grace. "I know these situations can feel personal," she said, her tone careful, as if navigating a minefield. "But sometimes to move forward, people like us must know when to yield, to pick our battles." The words landed like a velvet blade, their condescension cloaked in empathy. People like us. The phrase hung between them, a subtle erasure, lumping Zara's fight for her rightful place into a vague collective struggle. Malik's jaw tightened, his presence a quiet anchor beside Zara, but he didn't speak. This was her moment, her battlefield, and he knew it. Zara's lips curved, not a smile but a challenge, her voice cutting through the atrium's hush. "If I must yield my right to exist in a space I earned, just to be accepted, then that space isn't worth my presence." The atrium stilled, the crowd's silence a tangible force. Elaine's smile froze, her pearl earrings glinting as she tilted her head, caught off guard by the precision of Zara's rebuke. The words didn't shout. They sliced, exposing the fragility of her performative allyship. A young woman in the crowd, clutching a conference badge, nodded almost imperceptibly. A man in a linen suit lowered his phone, his expression shifting from curiosity to discomfort. Zara stood, a pillar of quiet defiance, her badge a beacon, her silence louder than any outburst. Elaine's composure wavered, her hand smoothing her dress as if to regain control. "I only meant," she said, her voice softer now, almost pleading, "that we can achieve more by working within the system, not against it." Zara's gaze didn't flinch. "The system," she said, "is what erased my name from that reservation. It's what let you think your advice is empathy instead of a demand for compliance." The words landed like a thunderclap, their truth reverberating through the atrium. Elaine's face flushed, a rare crack in her polished veneer. She stepped back, her smile now a grimace, her retreat a silent admission of defeat. The crowd watched, breathless, as she murmured an excuse and slipped away, her cream dress vanishing into the throng. Victor, hovering near the escalators, avoided Zara's gaze, his authority diminished further by the exchange. Elise's tablet trembled in her hands, her role in the drama reduced to a bystander's silence. Zara stood, her badge gleaming, her presence a declaration. She didn't need to raise her voice. Her existence was enough to force the room to reckon with itself. Through the glass door, Grayson Holt's laughter continued, oblivious to the shift in the air. But the atrium knew, the crowd knew, that Zara Nia was not just a name on a badge. She was a force, rewriting the rules of a system that had tried to erase her. The atrium of Luminary towers had exhaled its tension, but the air remained charged, a coiled spring waiting to snap. Zara Nia's rebuke of Dr. Elaine Prescott's veiled condescension still lingered, a spark that had ignited the crowd's conscience. Her badge, emblazoned with keynote, was a silent testament to her unyielding presence, though she had slipped away to prepare her speech, leaving the battlefield to Malik Idris. Victor Langston, the manager, hovered at the atrium's edge, his cufflinks dull under the quartz chandeliers, his authority a crumbling facade. The Apex Forum's elite milled about, their whispers a low hum, but the true reckoning was unfolding elsewhere, behind a frosted glass door in a boardroom where power would be weighed, judged, and reshaped. At 1 p.m., Malik strode into the private boardroom, a stark chamber of walnut and steel overlooking the city's skyline. The Apex Forum's organizing committee and Luminary Towers executive team sat around a polished table, their faces a gallery of unease. Seasoned tycoons with silver hair, younger influencers with nervous tics, all fidgeting under the weight of Malik's presence. At 6'2", in a charcoal suit that spoke of wealth without ostentation, he was a force, a venture capitalist whose name moved markets. But today he was a prosecutor, his eyes sharp as obsidian, his voice a blade honed for truth. Victor entered last, his steps hesitant, his navy suit creased as if it bore the weight of his unraveling career. He clutched a leather portfolio, unopened, a prop he didn't dare use. His seat remained unassigned, a subtle power play by Malik, who let the omission hang like a noose. The room's silence was a living thing, broken only by the soft hum of a projector descending from the ceiling. Over the past 12 months, Malik began, his voice steady, a low thunder that filled the space. 19 guests of color had their VIP reservations overridden at this hotel. In 15 cases, those spaces were reassigned to white attendees of lesser rank or role, all without verification, all with a single override. He tapped a touchpad, and the projector flared to life, casting a spreadsheet across the wall, time-stamped, color-coded, irrefutable. Each row was a name, a date, a silent erasure. The data, synced from the hotel's cloud system, was a cold mirror reflecting the board's complicity. Victor's knuckles whitened, his portfolio trembling in his lap. The committee shifted. Silver-haired executive adjusting his tie, a younger woman biting her lip, their discomfort a confession they couldn't voice. "This wasn't intentional," Victor said, his voice quivering, a plea masquerading as defense. "We were flexible, accommodating key partners." Malik's gaze pinned him, unyielding. "Flexible," he repeated, the word a blade twisted in the wound. "Your flexibility is the most effective tool of exclusion I've seen, a button press that erases a name, a career, a right, without accountability." The room recoiled, the air crackling with the weight of truth. A board member, Nora Sterling, cleared her throat, her voice cautious. "Mr. Idris, we take this seriously. We can issue a statement, retrain staff." "Statements don't dismantle systems," Malik cut in, his voice a quiet storm. "Actions do. Your system allowed my wife, Dr. Zara, the keynote speaker, to be erased for a sponsor's whim. That's not an oversight. It's a design flaw." Victor's face drained of color, his portfolio slipping to the table. "No one intended harm," he said weakly. "We prioritize the forum's success." Malik leaned forward, his presence filling the room like a gathering tempest. "Success built on exclusion is failure," he said. "You didn't just erase Zara's name. You erased every guest who trusted your system, every voice you deemed less valuable than a platinum sponsor's." The spreadsheet glowed behind him, each row a silent accusation. A board member shifted, his chair creaking. Another stared at the table, avoiding Malik's gaze. The truth was a weight they couldn't shrug off, a mirror they couldn't unsee. Malik tapped the touchpad again, and a new document appeared, an internal log showing Victor's override authorization for Zara's reservation, time-stamped at 02 a.m., just minutes before her arrival. Victor's breath hitched, his eyes darting to the screen. "That must be a glitch," he stammered, his voice a fraying thread. "There are no glitches here," Malik said, his voice steel. "Only choices, and yours ends now." He turned to the board, his words a gavel. "Effective immediately. Victor Langston is relieved of his duties. The override system is disabled. And Sana Khan, a manager who was excluded from last year's forum, is appointed head of guest services." The room gasped, a collective inhale that shattered the silence. Sana Khan, a South Asian woman in her 30s, sat at the table's edge, her eyes widening. She'd been a silent observer, her presence overlooked until now. Her appointment was a seismic shift, a reclaiming of space for those the system had sidelined. Victor's portfolio fell to the floor, his face ashen, his career reduced to a cautionary tale. Nora Sterling nodded, her voice tentative. It's bold but necessary. Another board member murmured agreement, their assent a reluctant acknowledgement of the truth Malik had laid bare. The spreadsheet flickered on the wall, a ledger of sins now exposed. Malik sat back, his posture relaxed but his eyes unyielding. A general who'd won the battle but knew the war was far from over. The boardroom door closed behind Victor as he stumbled out, the frosted glass a final curtain on his tenure. The committee sat in silence, the city skyline beyond the windows a distant witness to a system beginning to crack. The truth, once erased with a button, was now indelible, a reckoning that would echo beyond Luminary towers. The grand auditorium of Luminary towers pulsed with a restless energy, its vast expanse a crucible, where the Apex Forum's brightest minds converged. At 3 p.m., the stage was set, a sleek platform framed by towering LED screens, bathed in soft indigo light that shimmered off polished walnut panels. The audience, a sea of tech moguls, policymakers, and academics, filled the tiered seats, their murmurs a low tide of anticipation. The morning's drama in the atrium, Zara Nia's erased reservation, Malik Idris's searing rebuke, and Dr. Elaine Prescott's faltering empathy, had spread like wildfire, whispered in corridors, shared in encrypted group chats. Now, as the lights dimmed, all eyes turned to the woman whose name had become a lightning rod, a keynote speaker whose voice promised to reshape the forum's soul. Zara Nia stepped onto the stage, her crimson dress a bold stroke against the minimalist backdrop, her natural curls loose, cascading like a crown. At 34, she was a data scientist, a best-selling author, a force whose book Code for Justice had ignited global debates on AI fairness. Her silver cuff, a gift from Malik, glinted as she adjusted the microphone, her movements deliberate, unhurried. The audience leaned forward, their silence a canvas for the weight of her presence. No badge adorned her now, she needed none. Zara was not just a speaker, she was a reckoning, a woman who had turned erasure into a rallying cry. She stood at the podium, her gaze sweeping the auditorium, lingering on faces she knew. A venture capitalist who'd once dismissed her work, a professor who'd praised her book but stayed silent in the atrium. Malik sat in the front row, his charcoal suit a quiet anchor, his eyes steady with unspoken pride. The air crackled, charged with the memory of Room 5B, the glass door behind which Grayson Holt still lounged, oblivious to the storm his privilege had unleashed. "Good afternoon," Zara began, her voice clear, a bell that cut through the auditorium's hush. "I was invited to speak about systems, how we design them, how they shape us. But today I'm going to talk about what happens when those systems are designed to erase." The words landed like a spark in dry grass, igniting the audience's attention. A young woman in the balcony gripped her notebook, her pen stilled. An older man in a linen suit shifted, his discomfort a mirror to the truth Zara wielded. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Each syllable was a stone, building a monument to the unseen. "I didn't lose my reservation to Room 5B because of a glitch," she said, her voice steady, a quiet blade. "I was erased because the system allowed it. A single override, a button pressed by someone who decided my name was less valuable than another's. That system wasn't built for people like me to thrive. It was built to let us vanish, quietly, flexibly." The auditorium stilled, the silence a weight that pressed against the LED screens. Zara paused, her gaze piercing as if daring anyone to look away. A tech CEO in the third row lowered his phone, his live stream forgotten. A policy advisor adjusted her glasses, her expression unreadable but taut. The truth was a mirror, and Zara held it high, forcing the room to see its reflection. "Systems don't fail by accident," she continued, her voice rising, not in volume but in resonance. "They're designed. Every algorithm, every override, every choice reflects a priority. When I stood in that atrium, denied my place, it wasn't a mistake. It was a system doing exactly what it was meant to do, prioritizing privilege over principle. The words struck like a thunderclap, their truth reverberating through the walnut panels. The young woman in the balcony nodded, her eyes shining with resolve. The older man's hands clasped tightly, his knuckles pale. Zara's presence filled the stage, her crimson dress aflame, her voice a beacon. She didn't speak of her anger. She spoke of design, of intent, of a world that could be remade if only it dared to question its foundations. "This isn't just about a room," she said, her voice softening, a quiet storm now gathering force. "It's about every name erased, every voice sidelined, every person told their place is negotiable. I'm here because I refuse to be erased, and I'm speaking because silence is the system's greatest ally." The audience exhaled, a collective release that broke the silence. A ripple of applause began, hesitant at first, then swelling, a tide that filled the auditorium. The young woman clapped fiercely, her notebook forgotten. The tech CEO stood, his applause reluctant but undeniable. Even the policy advisor joined, her hands moving as if compelled by a truth she couldn't ignore. Malik's lips curved, a faint smile of pride, his presence a silent vow that Zara's fight was his own. Zara raised a hand, silencing the applause, her gaze unyielding. "Don't clap for me," she said, her voice sharp, a final blade. "Clap for the systems you'll dismantle, the truths you'll face, the names you'll never let be erased again." The auditorium fell silent once more, the weight of her words a challenge etched into every heart. No one moved, no one spoke. The LED screens flickered, casting Zara's silhouette across the room, a shadow that loomed larger than the stage. Grayson Holt's name, once a banner of privilege, was forgotten in that moment. The forum, the system, the world, it all paused, forced to listen to a woman who had turned a single override into a manifesto for change. Zara stepped back from the podium, her crimson dress catching the light, her presence a promise that the fight was far from over. The audience sat breathless, their silence a testament to a truth they could no longer ignore. The Apex Forum would never be the same, and neither would they. A week had passed since Zaranaya's voice had shaken the foundations of the Apex Forum, her keynote a blade that carved truth into the heart of Luminary towers. The grand auditorium's echoes had faded, but the ripples of her words spread far beyond the polished granite and quartz chandeliers, igniting whispers in boardrooms, hashtags on screens, and a quiet revolution in the systems that had once silenced the unseen. On this crisp morning, as the city hummed below a sky streaked with gold, Zara returned, not to fight, not to reclaim, but to witness a transformation etched in her name. The air carried a different weight now, a promise of accountability, where exclusion had once reigned. Luminary towers stood as regal as ever, its glass facade catching the dawn's light. But something had shifted. The Apex Forum's banners had been replaced with simpler signs, their slogans of innovation now tempered by a commitment to equity. Zara stepped from a sleek black SUV, her sapphire dress a quiet command, her loose curls framing a face that needed no adornment. Her silver cuff, Malik's gift, glinted as she moved, each step a deliberate reclaiming of a space that had tried to erase her. Malik emerged beside her, his charcoal suit a study in understated power, his hand brushing hers in a gesture of solidarity. The city's pulse thrummed beyond, but here, in this moment, the world seemed to pause, waiting for Zara to cross the threshold. The atrium, once a battlefield, greeted her with a hush. No security guards loomed, no tablets trembled in nervous hands. The crowd, conference organizers, staff, and a few lingering attendees, parted as she entered, their eyes not curious but reverent. At the VIP room's entrance, Sana Khan stood, waiting, her navy blazer embossed with the hotel's crest, her posture radiating a quiet strength. A South Asian woman in her 30s, Sana had once been excluded from the forum, her name erased like Zara's. Now, as head of guest services, she was a testament to the change Malik's reckoning had wrought. "Ms. Nia," Sana said, her voice warm, steady. carrying a depth that spoke of shared battles. Your space is ready. Zara's lips curved, a faint smile that held no triumph, only recognition. She glanced at the door to room 5B, its glass no longer a barrier but a portal. Above it, a sleek plaque gleamed, engraved with 2 words that stopped her breath, Zara Suite. The name was not a decoration, it was a declaration, a scar turned into a crown. The crowd watched, their silence a tapestry woven with respect, their presence a witness to a moment that felt like history. Sana opened the door, and Zara stepped inside, the room transformed. Gone was the sterile exclusivity of a week ago. The space now felt intimate, purposeful. A walnut table held a single framed document, the original reservation confirmation, time-stamped, a relic of the battle fought and won. Soft light filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting shadows that danced like stories. Malik followed, his hand resting lightly on her back, his eyes scanning the room with a quiet pride. Sana lingered at the threshold, her smile a bridge between past and future. This isn't just a room, Sana said, her voice soft but firm. It's a promise. No one will be erased here again. Zara's gaze settled on the framed confirmation, its black ink a testament to her refusal to vanish. She didn't speak, but her silence was a language, a weight that filled the Zara Suite with meaning. The crowd outside stirred, their murmurs a low hymn of acknowledgement. A young staff member, her badge new and gleaming, wiped a tear, her hands trembling with something like hope. An older organizer, his tie loosened, nodded as if seeing the room for the first time. Malik's voice broke the silence, low and resonant. You didn't just reclaim a space, he said, his eyes locked on Zara. You rewrote its purpose. Zara turned to him, her expression unreadable but alive, a fire that burned without consuming. It was never about the room, she said, her voice a quiet thunder. It was about the names that came before me, and the ones that will come after. The words landed like a vow, their truth reverberating through the Zara Suite. Sana's eyes shone, her nod a silent pledge to uphold. That vow. The crowd outside grew still, their phones lowered, their attention no longer on spectacle but on legacy. The young staff member stepped forward, her voice barely above a whisper. Thank you, she said, her words raw, unscripted, for making us see. Zara met her gaze, her smile faint but genuine. Keep seeing, she said, her voice soft but unyielding. That's how we change the system. The atrium exhaled, a collective release that carried the weight of a new beginning. The Zara Suite stood as a symbol, not of victory, but of reclamation, a space where names would no longer be erased by a button's press. Malik's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining, a silent promise that their fight was shared. Sanaya closed the door, sealing the moment, her blazer a badge of her own reclaimed power. Outside, the city pulsed, its skyline a canvas of possibility. The Apex Forum had changed, its systems audited, its priorities realigned. But here, in the Zara Suite, the change was tangible. A room reborn in the name of a woman who had refused to be erased. The crowd dispersed, their steps lighter, their eyes carrying a spark of resolve. The young staff member clutched her badge, her tears dry, her purpose clear. The older organizer straightened his tie, his nod a commitment to do better. Zara stood, by the window, the city stretching before her, its heartbeat syncing with her own. The Zara Suite was hers, not by conquest but by right, a testament to a fight that had begun with a single name and ended with a legacy. The framed confirmation gleamed, a quiet witness to a truth that would never be overridden again. Thank you for joining Zara Nia's journey of resilience and triumph, a story that reminds us no name should ever be erased. What did Zara's stand stir in you? Have you ever fought to reclaim your space? Share your thoughts below, we're all ears. Your voice matters and we can't wait to hear where you're tuning in from. Hit subscribe and ring the bell to catch our next tale of courage and change. Until then, stay bold, stay true, and we'll see you soon.